we've got to talk about these first impressions, because that's where it starts. Many people mistakenly believe that your first impression starts when the tour time starts. Absolutely not. Hi there, Kelsey Toner here, the founder of Guest Focused Tour Business Coaching, where every day myself and our team of experienced tour business coaches are helping you build a thriving, profitable tour business. In this series, we're looking at how to design a tour guests will never forget, a series of best practices for consistently creating unforgettable experiences. Across this series, we're sharing practical frameworks and tools, as well as, of course, sharing best practices from some of the most successful tour and activity businesses on the planet. In today's training, we're going to take a big step back and start assembling all of these different building blocks, right from a world-class first impression to those stunning finales. So a natural place to start is to begin with some of these structural elements of your tour. Now, we highly recommend leaning into your guest deep dive to make some of these key decisions. As a reminder, the guest deep dive is a specific method for finding out essential info about your ideal target guests. These might be preferences on tour start times, lengths, meeting times, what's a convenient place to start or end. The key takeaway here is the answers to these questions will shift pretty dramatically depending on who you are trying to serve at the highest possible level. Imagine how we might make different decisions if you were looking to have a really family-focused tour for someone like myself and my 3 young kids under 7 versus, let's say, an elderly retired couple or a younger backpacker. Those might significantly change decisions around start time, what is a convenient location, whether or not we have our own transportation, even the length of distance that you're ultimately going to be able to cover. In our full coaching program, we have an entire module on how to do an effective guest deep dive. But a key takeaway for you here would be to really focus in on some of those frustrations, challenges, or pain points. How can you give people that easy button? This came up and was relevant for expedition leader, someone who was doing these awesome multi-day canoe adventures. And the feedback that they got was, well, hey, the meeting location was a little bit difficult to get to and it required these extra hurdles. So he changed the design of the tour to actually have the meeting point at a more major airport. Even though it did add a 3.5-hour drive, this ultimately was much more popular and made it a lot more easier for people to ultimately come and have that experience. Beyond asking about pain points and frustrations and dream scenarios, you can even have specific questions in your guest deep dive where we're saying, hey, what is that ideal length of tour? Do you have a preferred location that might be easier to meet? Sometimes the easiest thing to do is directly ask the people we're looking to serve. The next natural step is to turn to our unforgettable product pyramid. As a reminder here, ultimately, we need to address some of the fundamental and physiological needs of our guests, as well as concerns around safety and comfort before we can move up this pyramid. And at the top, yes, we have the most memorable experience possible where we are creating opportunities for connections and bonds, as well as ultimately a transformation. But we've got to address these foundational parts of the pyramid first. At this physiological level, for our meeting point, of course, we want it to be easy to find or in a centralized location, but we also might consider, well, is it exposed? What if it's pouring rain or really cold or windy? Is that going to be an ideal place? As you're thinking about the journey that you're going on, are there shelter stops? Do we have opportunities to stop and have bathroom breaks? As we move up the unforgettable product pyramid, we have to build in elements that makes guests feel secure and safe. Are there any safety briefings required or important information to reassure your guests? Those are typically appropriate very near the beginning of the experience. Are there any people that might be hard of hearing or don't speak the language or need extra attention in some way? It may be appropriate to address what to do with any personal belongings, if this is a vehicle tour or if there's a place to leave things at your office, and most importantly, how to ask questions and establish who to turn to for help at any time during the experience. All right, as we're moving up this pyramid to now the layer of creating connection and bond between guests and between the guide and the guest, we've got to talk about these first impressions, because that's where it starts. Many people mistakenly believe that your first impression starts when the tour time starts. Absolutely not. For any experience, we highly, highly recommend that your guide, your experience host, is there at least 15 minutes, ideally 20 minutes early with nothing else to do except to warmly welcome your guests. So what are our tour leaders going to be doing? Well, you're going to be making your guests feel individually welcomed. This is an opportunity to learn, practice, and use those first names. It's important to check in on any dietary restrictions, maybe celebrations or other preferences that your guests have. It's an opportunity to ask about what motivated them to come on this tour or any specific goals or objectives that they have. And most importantly, for group bonding, your tour guide or host is the social lubricant where we want to create connections and points of interest between guests on the tour that day. Over the course of my career in this industry, I've literally been on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tours, activities, and experiences. And the number of companies that get this right is few and far between. Honestly, it's such low-hanging fruit that we need to build into the design of the experience. And here's the pet peeve that I have, is many tour guides are scheduled and maybe arrive 10, maybe even 15 or 20 minutes early. But guess what? They are busy, busy, busy. They might warmly welcome, give a quick smile or nod to people as they arrive, but then they're running around. Maybe they're putting out equipment or getting helmets ready or the kayaks, or they're printing a manifest, or they're dealing with the tour that just wrapped up. We really, really want to take advantage of this opportunity to not only give a cursory nod and smile, but build these social bonds with the group. All right, what about the official beginning to your tour, activity, or experience? We often refer to this as the orientation talk. And this is the moment for your tour leader or experience host to shine. More than anything else, we need to get people excited. This is a time to show your passion and create confidence. Hey, here's why today is a great day for this tour. We can introduce some of that positive framing. Why is it that guests are lucky to be here on this particular day at this particular time of year? Another pet peeve of mine is tours that start with very dry, logistical overview of what's going to happen. Here's what you need to know. Yes, small logistical talks are going to be important, but notice how this is different than an orientation talk. Think of logistics talks as the essential information that guests need to know at this point in time. On a multi-day experience, we're often having mini logistics talks over the course of the day or the course of each stop. In a day tour, we also have mini or micro logistics talks. For example, instead of talking about how the bathroom break is going to work right at the beginning, we might hint at it, but then ultimately give more detail before we take that break. Okay, how long is the bathroom break going to be? Where's the meeting point? What are some recommendations, etc. But my biggest pet peeve is coming in with that kind of low energy. You have to set the tone and raise the energy of the people who are here. I'm a big fan of actually scripting this orientation talk. Obviously, it needs to be delivered authentically, but we really want to hit a large number of beats here. I really encourage creating a script that compliments people on their great choice, complimenting your guests, make them feel great about the choice that they made here today. Secondly, we want to congratulate them on getting to the tour's start. Sometimes we forget, or we ultimately have difficulty empathizing with guests who might be, depending on who you're serving, but traveling from abroad. Maybe they're jet lagged. Maybe they don't speak the local language. Maybe it's very overwhelming being in a new place. So not only do we want to congratulate them on getting here, but it's a great time to reassure them. I love using language like, okay, everyone, you can take a deep breath. Let's all do it together. Okay, you are officially in great hands. This often gets a smile and reassure guests that they're in the right place, right where they ought to be. Of course, during our orientation talk, it's time to introduce that tour theme. As mentioned, a tour theme guides everything, whether it's an objective theme, a focus theme, a journey or a challenge theme, or a theme that is a story. Each stop, each story, each moment should ultimately enhance and contribute to that theme. Introducing your tour theme early, what your objective is, what you're setting out to do is essential, because if not, you're going to have difficulty creating a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction at the end of the tour. Now, it's important that we always start our tour on time. We don't want to fall into the trap of inconveniencing the majority of guests or having a subpar experience for them just for the sake of one or two folks. So build in contingency plans that the tour will start on time. A great technique is your first stop might be an easy to find location, and that can be built into the contingency plan of having people catch up if needed. There was a food tour I went on in Toronto, and one of the things I loved that eliminated this sense of waiting is that the guide, it was a food tour, actually opened up and brought one of his favorite pastries to kick things off right from the beginning of the tour. This really got the sense of, hey, the tour has begun, we're off and away on our objective. Okay, as we start moving on to each individual stop or element of the tour, it's time to get really, really granular. How is it that that particular stop contributes to the theme or the journey or the arc that you're taking people on? Secondly, what stories or content will you be sharing? Are there any props or visual aids that might be relevant for that stop? Can we engage all of our senses beyond just sight and hearing? Is there a participatory element or a way to engage our guests more fully? All of this should be captured in great detail as we go through element by element. Another best practice to keep in mind when designing an experience is something known as the peak end rule. This is a cognitive bias where people ultimately judge experiences largely based on how they felt during peak moments and specifically at the end. This peak end rule means we need to carefully design around our highest emotional moments and create meaningful conclusions. Let's look through an example. An example that comes to mind was this wonderful guide named Ronnie, and I was on a walking tour in Lisbon in Portugal. And she had clearly set up one of the most powerful stories right at the end of the tour on the exact location where the Carnation Revolution took place. And she had this incredibly moving story of how the soldiers at the time who were there to, essentially put down this rebellion ultimately took flowers, red carnations, put them in the end of their guns, and they joined the peaceful protest to overthrow dictatorship and authoritarian rule in Portugal. It was clear that she had chosen this exact story, this exact location to pack this emotional punch as a really beautiful wrap-up to that walking tour. Once you have elements in place, think about managing the flow of the tour. Between stops, can you build anticipation and excitement through potential cliffhangers or hooks of what we're going to see in the next stop? Are there mysteries to be solved that you can hint at, questions to be answered, or stories that will be concluded at the next stop? Keep in mind that dissatisfaction often comes from uncertainty versus necessarily small waits. We want people to not only be informed about what's happening next, but excited to get there. And as much as possible, we want to eliminate that feeling of just waiting around. Great tour designers will always have something up their sleeve, so it never feels like we're just waiting for something to happen. As you're assembling that ending element, I also encourage you to have a fairly tight script that's going to allow your guide or your experience host to bring your theme full circle, to celebrate and call out those shared achievements, to create that sense of satisfaction, to make the journey's meaning explicit as much as possible, to create an emotional impact. And of course, a final call to action for leaving reviews and recommendations and how important that is to your business. Some of the best tours and experiences that I've been on with some of the most talented guides, when they wrap up this concluding speech, guests break into applause. There are high fives of what people have accomplished together. This is what's possible if we take this extra time to really think about our conclusion. Now, as you know, the tour doesn't officially wrap up there, and I must say most companies do get this right. Those extra 15 or 20 minutes after the tour are just as crucial. So guides, experience hosts should stick around afterwards. Not only is this an opportunity to receive gratuities if it's applicable, which is probably why most people do it, but secondly, this is a time to have that personalized service, right? Give those personalized recommendations, orientations, and take that time to have the true last impression, so to speak, be one of incredible service. So as you can appreciate, to create a truly unforgettable experience, tour design is so much more than just a schedule of stops. It is a carefully crafted emotional journey incorporating lots of the elements that we've been sharing here in this series. There's a lot that goes into this, and we have a whole section in our coaching program assembling some of the world's best resources for designing world-class experiences. If you're interested to talk to one of our coaches, or you maybe get a second set of eyes on a new experience or tour or activity that you're designing, why not book a free strategy call with one of our coaches? We'd love to help. Before you go, in the comments below, what are some additional best practices when it comes to putting it all together that you might like to share with our community? If you found value in this video, it would mean the world to us to give us a like, a subscribe, and of course, share it with colleagues. Thanks so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.